I just cut all my hair off, and then I was like, ooh, I should dye it pink, and then I'd be very Dani Brown. Like I've never had short hair before, and I always look at your author photo, and I'm like, man, she is really rocking like the best short haircut. So
thank you. No, short hair is the best. I've shaved my head like 3 times.
And I'm starting to see that. I did the short, and I was like, well, it's just hair. If I don't like it, it'll grow back. And then I did it, and I was like, ooh, I like this. This is fun.
It's really cute. Really suits you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Talia Hibbert just complimented my hair.
I need to hide my view. Okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm open. Keep chatting.
You're so funny. Jenna was like, well, if she doesn't want to chat with you, I guess I could be on camera and chat with you. And like, yeah, we could talk about all kinds of things, but you know. So, I mean, I think that's one of the, you know, I think when I was reading the last book, you know, when she's like, they have to have someone come in and like pull hair out of her drain. And I was like, I feel so seen.
Oh my God, yes, but I have to pull the hair out of my own drain because I'm not living the heroine life and it's disgusting.
Yeah, no, my boyfriend does it for me. Everyone's
blessed.
He was also like, yeah, you should shave your head. That'd be fun. Yeah, but like, but in a girl like her, I was like, every time I see something like that, or like Alyssa Cole had a whole scene around like people wearing head, you know, scarves to bed, and I was like,
yes,
this feels so validated right now. And if you are joining us, welcome. We're just chatting a little bit while we wait for people to jump in. We will officially get started in a few minutes, so you know, feel free to say, you know, hello in the chat, and if you have formal Q&A questions, those go in the Q&A box themselves. That's what we'll be pulling from. In the meantime, I'm going to keep admiring Talia's hair because it's awesome. And hair is just, you know, that's been my life lately. I feel like during the pandemic, hair was, you know, yeah, I had purple hair before and I stopped. I was just like, why am I keeping this up? Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything.
See, I like have been the opposite. Like I had kept my hair really, really short for ages. And then during the pandemic, I couldn't be bothered really to do anything with it. So it just grew out. And then I was like, oh, I kind of remembered that I enjoyed having hair. And I was like, oh, now I want my hair to be cute. So I've just been trying loads of different stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely was like, I need something different. I'd cut it a little bit shorter. And then I was like, I think I want to grow it out. I miss the longer hair. And I'm like, well, but before we do that, let's just cut it all off because playing with your hair is fun. Have you ever done fun colors in your hair?
Oh, yeah, I used to do that all the time. I think like the first time I cut my hair was when I stopped relaxing my hair. So I cut it all off and then I dyed it like turquoise, like greeny blue. That was kind of my thing when I was a teenager.
So Jenna and I used to work together and she's always had turquoise hair, so I feel like I can't do turquoise. We have like these like,
oh, you don't want to like you don't want to take her thing.
Yeah, she grabbed turquoise, so I went purple, but you know,
fair enough.
Yeah. Okay, would you color it again?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've done it like I had that color. I've had like a very green. I had pink, I had purple, I had red. I remember when I had like a buzz cut, I bleached it and it was just blonde, but it was really patchy, so I stopped doing that.
Yeah, it was definitely I'm going to do this and I don't know what's going to happen. There would be color, but other than that, with curly hair, like, I don't know. They were like, the bleaching might affect your hair.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's never good when your stylist is telling you like, question mark. I did want to ask you before we get into the like true Q&A, you're like, do you have pets?
It's the tragedy of my life that I do not have pets because I'm really allergic to pretty much everything. So my mum has a cat and a dog and I kind of like they're mine in spirit, but I can't spend too long around them or I start wheezing. It's very tragic.
Is that why we get characters like Smudge in the book? Because
yes, I'm pining.
Yeah. Animals are pretty awesome, but like being able to go to someone else's house and sort of have an animal experience is also awesome.
That's true. I'm like an aunt.
Yeah, and somebody was commenting that like, yeah, you know, salons were closed for so long that like it was, you know, once things started opening back up, hair became a big deal. I know in my book we talked about hair, like every session we'd also be talking about hair because none of us could go to the salon or like any of that stuff. But
yeah, no, when things like opened up, I think we had like a period where they opened and then they closed again, and in the middle of that I went to get a haircut and I felt amazing because my hair, I don't know about you, my hair grows at different speeds and it's different textures, so I basically had a mullet. Like the front was like this long and then the back was like this long and it was looking very questionable. So I was very grateful for the help.
I happily throw my money at my
yeah.
There's nothing ever, on its own, nothing good is happening sometimes. And I don't know if you do the thing where it's like you wash your hair and then you're like, well, we'll see what we can get when this dries.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, I wonder how this is going to turn out. You have to wash your hair like the day before something happens.
Yes.
Because the day of, it could look any which way.
No clue. I know. Sometimes I go to work, people are like, your hair looks so cute. And I'm like, I left when it was dry. I don't know what it looks like.
It's an accident, but thank you.
It's my daily surprise. I have a lot less surprise now, but it's still a surprise. All right, I think we're going. It is 12:02. Are we going to get started, Jenna? I okayed her. All right. It is good mindfulness practice to have curly hair.
Very true.
All right, well, thanks for being here, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Elise, and I am the manager with the San Mateo County Libraries. I'm also a very avid romance reader and big fan of our guest today. Talia Hibbert and I will be discussing her writing and the Brown Sisters trilogy before she answers your questions. Don't forget, coming up, you can join us in January as we welcome Meg Waite-Clayton, New York Times bestselling author of The Postmistress of Paris, on Tuesday, January 11th at 6:30 p.m. Just a little housekeeping. Your microphone and video will be turned off, but please feel free to use the chat and submit your questions in the Zoom Q&A. For those who'd like access to live closed captions for this event, click on CC, then show subtitles. So San Mateo County Libraries welcomes Talia Hibbert, a New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Talia writes award-winning steamy and diverse romance that depicts honest and positive representations of people of marginalized identities. I can get through this. Her critically acclaimed Brown Sisters trilogy follows the three quirky Brown sisters, Chloe, Dani, and Eve, and I'm really excited to know like who everyone's favorite is, as they seek their very own happily ever afters. Thanks for joining us today, all the way from England. Talia, we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I do wonder though, do you have a favorite of the Brown sisters?
That's tricky. I have so I have a sister I relate to the most. So the sister I relate to the most is Chloe. The sister I most enjoyed writing is Eve. And I feel like that means Dani has to be my favorite, so she's not left out.
I do love Eve. She is a little bit of like chaotic good in a way that is just super duper fun for all the D&D fans out there. Can you tell us a little bit just like how did these sisters come about? How did this trilogy come about? And and like any really favorite moments?
So in I think it was 2018. The rom-com trend in romance was in full swing, although it's still in full swing. So it was beginning its full swing. And I had read quite a few rom-coms and thought, oh, I really like this. I wonder if I could do this, because previously all my romances had not been rom-coms per se. I hadn't been trying to infuse comedy into the mix. So I set myself a challenge to do it. And I decided that if I was going to write a rom-com, I would want the heroine to have a chronic pain condition, because I do, and I feel like it's a really underused source of dark comedy. So I started crafting Chloe's character from there. And then, as I was building her and I was thinking she has real older sister energy, I was like, okay, so who are her younger sisters? And that's how I decided that it was going to be this trilogy following these three sisters.
Do you have sisters or siblings?
I do. I have brothers, but they don't really matter. I have three sisters.
Where are you are you like the older, middle, youngest?
I am like the oldest middle, so I have one older sister and two younger sisters.
Okay, well, you talked about older sister energy. I was like, oh, I feel like she must know it. I have an older brother, so I know what older brother energy is like. It's a very specific kind of energy. So for sure, I was like, feels like there's something there. And then, like, of the three books, are there any moments that like you still look back and you were like, that was just like my genius level comedic writing right there?
I remember when I wrote Chloe, like the first draft of Chloe Brown, I was like, I need to make this funny. I need something funny to happen. And I decided she's going to get stuck up a tree. And I thought I was hilarious. I was like, oh, the girls have never seen comedy like this. So remembering that always makes me happy.
I mean, it is hilarious. I think the cat up the tree is like got to be the most like 1950s classic plot device ever. But the way it goes in, you know, Get a Life, Chloe Brown is obviously not at all. The fire department is not called. She scrambles up this tree, and Red is just like, "What is this woman doing?" And then we get Smudge, which honestly, I think, you know, that really is a huge part of the book. And I love to see animals in books. Smudge is amazing. And so I love the idea. It made me not want to climb a tree though, for sure. I haven't done it as a kid, and I don't think I should try now.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Not the best idea. I think like that, and then also Eve hitting Jacob with her car.
Oh, I was thrilled with myself for that. Because I wrote Eve in the middle of the pandemic, like we were in lockdown. Well, it was kind of like the beginning, actually. We didn't know how long it was going to go, but it was going on for a really long time. And I was like, this book needs to be the most chaotic book I've ever written because I'm so bored right now. And so that's why she hits him with her car.
I mean, well, you're saying you wrote it during the pandemic. I and probably everyone else read it during the pandemic. And to me, I don't know, it was this like burst of light and ridiculousness that I just needed so much in that moment. And I really think that's like why rom-coms are still as big as they are, because we all have really needed that humor and that delight.
Yeah.
So are you seeing like more rom-coms in your future?
Definitely. I think, so I have like a spin-off series of from the Brown sisters scheduled with Avon. It's called Briar, and it's about the Montrose family who Eve meets in her book when she goes to Briar. So I'm excited to dream up more shenanigans.
You write excellent shenanigans. I think we're all here. And those of you in the chat, if you have a favorite shenanigan from the Brown sisters books, please feel free to drop it in the chat, because I would love to see what other people are like really, really just loving. Although hashtag rugbay, I mean, that's its own, that is like the entire book of shenanigans, and that just like encapsulated. So if you haven't read the second book, Get a Clue, Dani Brown, you really need to, because it's absolutely delightful, and you will get to find out all about hashtag rugbay. Which of course brings me to like my favorite hero, and I imagine from this trilogy it's also some other people's, although I know Red has a big following. Jacob is like the ultimate grumpy, gotta love him, but Zafir. And so like I've seen conversations, and I've been in conversations where we talked about like how you write these amazing cinnamon roll heroes, who are also kind of having a moment right now, which is exciting as well. I think we all kind of want that like sweet, warm, comforting hero as opposed to the like alpha male. But I'm curious, like, did you set out with that? Your heroes are very enlightened.
I feel like I have a very low patience threshold for men. So when I'm writing, when I'm writing my heroines, they can make really bad choices. They can be like really kind of terrible people, can do terrible things. And I'm like, it's okay, honey, you're going through something, you deserve this moment. But with the hero, I'm like, you better be on your best behavior 24/7. Otherwise you're out of the book. So I feel like that's why cinnamon roll heroes have kind of become my thing.
Totally. I think especially like mental health plays a role with your heroes.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
I think, another thing is, I know I said that my brothers didn't matter, but they are pretty nice. And so I'm lucky to have seen like men who have healthy connections with their interior selves and their emotions. And a lot of the time when I see men who don't, and the harm they do themselves and do to other people, I'm like, I just wish that this was something that was more accessible to all men. And so it's something that I enjoy the opportunity to model in my books with my heroes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important. And it's, you kind of see it with Red. You see him getting to this point where he's like, I need therapy. Like his past relationship is abusive, really awful. And you also don't see that in romance often. We often are sort of traveling through the heroine's journey, and the hero is sort of there to assist. But in your books, the heroes are also going through a lot of their own things. So, I mean, that to me was like, seeing him say, like, I kind of need therapy, and I need to deal with some of these things was really also amazing. And I think is what endears your heroes to so many people. I do have to mention, though, because I do have a like outstandingly favorite character in Gigi. And I would totally read, I don't know, you probably get this, like I would read a Gigi book for sure. Just like
I do get that.
So like, and this idea, they have the Brown sisters have this connection to their grandmother in a way that we see in books sometimes, but she's also incredibly fabulous. And like their parents are there, especially in the last book, we get a little more of the parents, but we really see Gigi's impact on them. And I'm curious like how that character came about.
So one of the reasons why I'm not going to write a book for Gigi is that she's really heavily inspired by my own grandmothers. So that would be like a bit creepy. So I grew up with 3 grandmothers, well, 2, and then my great grandmother, who I was very lucky to grow up with. And they were all just really key in shaping my life, you know, because my mum was a single parent. She worked and studied a lot. And so I was always with someone, and my grandmothers were good friends. So sometimes I was with all of them. And they were just really important to me, and also very fabulous and role models and trailblazers. And so it was like, obviously they all need to be in this book within Gigi.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd like to be Gigi when I grow up. I'm sure other people feel the same way. And somebody in the chat was circling back to the fact that Zafir is Pakistani, and that is so rare. Like your books hit this amazing level of diversity and inclusion. And I know like these books people have been writing books with diverse characters forever, but romance is definitely seeing a more willingness to publish that and to be open about it. And so, you know, like the fact that you're able to do that is great.
Yeah, when I started out, you know, I grew up in the time where if you were writing books like mine, you probably weren't going to get published unless you were like in the top 0.0001% of talented people. And I'm perfectly comfortable saying that I'm not. I'm good, but I'm not up here. You know, I'm not good enough to be the token. So the fact that I then got to watch publishing change, and I got to see, you know, I got to learn about authors like Beverly Jenkins. I got to read books by Rebecca Weatherspoon, Alicia Wright. These are all authors who I was reading as a teenager and into my 20s, and it changed my perspective of what I would be allowed to do. And then, you know, that really came to fruition with this series.
Yeah, Alicia Wright, huge fan. And she's hilarious. You're not following her on Instagram or TikTok. You should.
Oh, yes, her TikTok videos. Like, what?
Totally. And I think, you know, I think right now we're, as a society, way more aware of the idea that representation matters. And romance is definitely latching onto that. But, you know, did you find there was a point where like your reading habits really shifted? You were talking about like your teens, early 20s. Like, you know, was there one particular book that sort of really did it, or did you just start to realize there was more available and thus you could partake?
There was this huge shift so I grew up in a really white small town, and the library was just entirely books by and about white people, and there was a real lack of any other kind of diversity in those books as well. And then I got my own debit card, and I could order ebooks without my mum being like, what is The Hunter Takes a Mate, honey? So I was just downloading, and I was searching using keywords of the books I'd always wanted to see. Like I knew I wanted to see a Black heroine. And so I found Theodora Taylor, I found Rebecca Weatherspoon. Those were like the first books that I read with heroines who I could really relate to in that way. And I was like, oh.
It is mind-blowing, and it gives you this like weird contrast of like, I've been reading things I really enjoyed before, but I don't know that they were representing me. I don't know if I saw myself. And romance is really one of those genres where like being able to see bits and pieces of your life, and or maybe you're even at your idealized life, is like, I think what really draws people in.
Yeah.
So were you always a romance reader?
Oh yeah, my first romance I read when I was 12, it was Splendid by Julia Quinn. And in the UK, you know, the cartoon cover trend, in the UK, we've pretty much always had cartoon covers for anything that's like chick lit, women's fic. So I picked it up, I was like, this looks cute, this looks fun. Then I got to this scene where he like finger bangs her at a picnic, and I was like, what is this? But also like, keep reading. And then I was hooked from there.
That's awesome. I mean, Julia Quinn, I think, is a really great place to start. Are you a Bridgerton fan?
I haven't seen I really need to. People keep asking me, and I'm like, I wish I could answer you.
It's such the thing right now in romance that I feel like we can't have a conversation about romance books or movies or anything without being like, and Bridgerton. Splendid is an awesome book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend to the audience. So when I mean, you write such diverse characters, such inclusive stories, and you're saying like with Chloe, you sort of drew on your own experience. So when you're writing other characters, where does that inspiration come from? Is it like, I haven't seen this thing, I want to write it? Or is it like, do you write based on, people like you said with your grandmother?
I think a lot of the time I start from a point of something I relate to, and it informs the story in either a big way or more of an incidental way. But that is always kind of the kernel of beginningness. So I do think that a lot of the time, they say write what you know, and I think the worlds of my books and the characters within them are very much based on what I know, whether that's me or the people around me. But at the same time, I try not to base characters very specifically on real people, because I feel like that's a good way to get into trouble. I felt fine doing it with my grandmas, because what are they going to do? But other than that.
And I am seeing questions popping into the chat. Just a reminder, if you do have, we are going to do like a very formal ask Talia all your burning questions about the Brown sisters and romance and more. But please make sure you put your questions in the Q&A, because the chat is moving real fast, and I am just not that quick to be able to catch everything. So please drop your questions in the Q&A so that we can make sure that we get to them and you have a chance to have them answered. Oh, and someone is mentioning narrators for audiobooks, and I did read the first book. I did read, Get a Life, Chloe Brown in the audiobook. And of course, your narrator is amazing. Were you thrilled with that choice?
Oh my God, yes. And speaking of Bridgerton, she couldn't do the last 2 books. I was disappointed when I found out, but I later found it's because she was cast as Lady Danbury in Bridgerton. I was like, okay, fair enough, I'll allow it. But then I was really lucky as well, because the second narrator for the next 2 books, also amazing. So I felt very blessed.
Are you an audiobook fan in general?
No. I can't concentrate on audiobooks. Like I'm listening, and then like 5 hours have passed and I zoned out. So unfortunately,
story happened. We end up together, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So in that case, ebooks or paper books?
I love ebooks because sometimes I have trouble with my hands, and I've got my book phone here. I have a phone that's just specifically for books. It's smaller and it's easy to carry and it follows me everywhere.
That's amazing. Did you have a book cover on your phone right now? Is that what you're reading, or is that your background?
That is my background of one of my book covers, because I'm very self-absorbed.
If I had amazing book covers of really fantastic books, I would plaster them everywhere in my home. So, and it's a pretty cover. And you've been I feel like there's been new covers coming out as well for some of your books.
Yes, some of my books this year have had like cover makeovers, because I felt like, the first year of my career, I was publishing really rapidly. And at first I didn't have a lot of money and also not a lot of expertise. And now I feel like I really know what my brand is. So I was like, okay, these books deserve a new look because they're looking a bit raggedy.
And I would be remiss, because I know one of my good friends is here, and I sort of got her into paranormal by saying, she was like, I don't like paranormal. I don't want to read paranormal. It doesn't ever work for me. And I was like, have you read Mating the Huntress, which is one of my favorites of yours? And not just because it involves cupcakes and a werewolf and this family of monster hunters, but just like their interactions are so sweet. And can you talk a little bit about writing in the paranormal genre?
So Mating the Huntress was kind of an accident, in that it was coming up to Halloween and I didn't have a lot of time to write, because I was working on Get a Life, Chloe Brown. But I wanted to write something fun. And I, growing up, was a huge fan of Buffy and Xena Warrior Princess and Star Trek and all things speculative. And I was walking home from somewhere and I was like, oh, what if there was a werewolf, and it just jumped out and was like, you're my mate? And I was like, what? And then I decided to write a book about that. And I just really wanted to make it feel very me, while still having all the things that I love so much about paranormal romance. So I kind of mushed it together and hoped for the best.
And I saw in one of your newsletters that we will be maybe getting more of books in this series.
I'm really working on that, because the original novella was not intended to be the first book in a series. And the more I write and the more series I write, the more I develop very specific requirements for what a first in series book should be. So I've spent ages looking at the book, like, how can I make a series out of this? But I actually recently had a breakthrough. So more books in this world are coming, yes.
You don't know how much that warms my paranormal loving heart. Because I make everyone read that book now. Like I was like, we're reading this in book club for Halloween. Like I just need, if you haven't read it, please go read Mating the Hunters. It's absolutely, sometimes short stories are, you know, you're like, I want more. And sometimes they're just like the perfect little bite. And this is totally the perfect little bite. Like, you have to approach short stories in a different sort of way?
Definitely. I feel like, you know, some readers, I think, underwrite for their first draft. I'm always someone who overwrites. And so shorter stories are really challenging because it's so easy to convey something in a paragraph, but doing it in a single sentence is much harder. So you really have to, like, from the beginning, plan it to be a concise but satisfying story.
Does that mean there's like there's a ton of deleted scenes somewhere out there in your computer, in your head, that didn't make the cut?
No, because I tend to plan out my scenes in my head before I write them, but I'm actually really excited because my book I'm working on right now, which is my first YA romance, it's called Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I have, for the first time ever, a deleted scene that I really want people to see, but it won't fit in the book, and it's really long, and I'm already like, how can I have this scene everywhere? People need to see it.
Wow. And I'm sure there are several people who are happy that I know Jenna, our host and fabulous technical planner, is a huge YA fan. So I'm sure she's in the background going, ooh, a YA book. And it sounds like you're still like in the process, but is there anything you can tell us about this book?
I actually have to hand in the final draft on Wednesday. So I can tell you that it's about two former best friends who are now bitter enemies and rivals, and they both sign up to the same enrichment scheme that takes place in the woods, basically, and they have to work together and maybe face the fact that they fell out so badly because their feelings for each other are very intense.
Strong feelings driving it. Well, that sounds exciting. Jenna said based on the title alone, she's already ready to read it. We are like ordering it for the library right now. And someone was asking if we could circle back to Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and talk a little bit more about the characters and the plot. And you'd mentioned, you know, Chloe is based on you a little bit. And she's just a really fascinating character because she's in pain. Like you're right, we don't see that often. She is grumpy and she's like, and that's who I am, you know, and I love that. And so she and Red really, at first I almost felt like we were going into like an enemies to lovers book, but it doesn't kind of play out that way. So, I mean, are you willing to talk a little bit more about those characters?
Yeah, so with Chloe, I knew that the thing is when you have like a chronic illness, it's really easy for your world to get smaller and you have to consciously try and fight against that. So I knew I wanted the book to be about that, but at the same time, I didn't want it to be like Chloe learns to be nice to people, because I kind of like that she's annoyed all the time, and I think she has good reason to be annoyed all the time. I could be biased, who knows? So I wanted her to hold on to just being able to feel her feelings and to be grumpy when she's in pain and things like that, but at the same time to work towards having the life that she wants. And so when I was crafting Red, I kind of crafted him in response to Chloe's needs. So one thing is that he's going to be really agreeable because a lot of the time she's going to start a conversation in a very bad mood, and he needs to be the kind of person who's like, hey, chill out. And also I knew that, you know, he needed to have something going on of his own that made him empathetic enough to understand where she was coming from. Because, you know, if you have like a super perfect hero, surely he's going to want a super perfect heroine and they're going to go off and be perfect and insufferable together, and I didn't want that. So I kind of tried to craft them like puzzle pieces that fit.
I mean, and they fit extremely well together. And one thing I think I really appreciate is that they both react similarly to each other's like former relationships. Like, he is completely outraged that she had this fiance who didn't take her pain seriously. You know, and she hears about this abusive relationship and how much of his, you know, his art, his passion, his career were tied up in this other person and how he lost all that confidence. And they both are just like absolutely not, not having it. And so I felt like they really connected on that level as well. And they're super hot together. Let's not ignore that part. But you've got this like super tattooed, artist that she's spying on. Like that's really how things sort of kick off for them. And so, I mean, like that is like a great plot point, and I'm just curious like how that came about, and what you were, the idea of spying on someone.
I think like the first kind of draft, or I wrote like the first few chapters to try and sell the book to publishers, and so I drafted a new beginning a few times, and initially it was going to be that Red was like he was going to be famous essentially, but like disgraced. So Chloe was going to be outraged that someone so terrible was living across the way from her, and like, I need to keep an eye on him. And then she sees how hot he is and she's like, I need to keep several eyes on him. So I moved away from that story for a lot of reasons, but I still really liked the idea of her spying on him, so I kept it.
And I particularly love that they go camping and he like builds her a nest in a tent. Like, this guy is amazing, but while still dealing with his own stuff. But like, he really sees her. He's catching all of these little details, and your heroes are just super observant in that way. Do you like camping?
No, first of all, when I wrote that camping scene, I had never been camping, so I wrote it from a place of blissful ignorance. I have since been camping, and I lasted one night, and then I cried, and I was taken to a hotel.
Did you get s'mores at least?
I did not get s'mores because my fiance was like, we're not allowed to set fires, it's dangerous. And I was like, Red would do it.
Well, but he doesn't even just do it, like he's planned ahead, and he's got this like friendly. And at first she's like, you don't have bug spray, you have all these bags, like how do you not prepared? And like, he is prepared, he's prepared for her. And that is just like incredibly swoon worthy. And some people are like, they've never been camping either. Well, if you can find a Red who will make you s'mores and like put fairy lights up in a tent, I highly suggest it. Otherwise, go to a hotel.
Yeah.
But I mean, between that and just, I often feel like I'm really on the heroine's journey. And I, in this book, felt like I was really on both of their journeys.
Yeah.
Because Red has got a lot going on, and Chloe has got this list that sort of propels, the book forward. And that list changes. And that's really exciting to me as well. Was there anything you were like, oh, this definitely needs to be on the list? I would put this on the list if it were a longer list.
I was really to the point with the list because I built it like to serve the story. So I was like, oh, I want this scene, so I'm going to put something on the list that will make it happen.
You're like, I really want her clinging to the back of him on a motorcycle.
Exactly. So I was like, on the list it goes.
And I mean, and that's also really one of the big contrasts we see between like his ex and her, where she's like, I loved it, like that was fun, and the ex was like, absolutely not. And so you start to see like how they fit together.
Yes, because like I also refuse to go on motorbikes, so I would not be Red's ideal partner.
Fair, totally fair. That's why we read sometimes, though, to get to the things exactly. Maybe not quite so willing to do. Do you write that way? Like, you'll write things that are not necessarily things you would ever want to do. Like, you're like, I'm not doing that, but it sounds fun for someone else.
Yes, definitely. Like the motorbike is a prime example. My dad loves motorbikes. One of my earliest memories is him being like, come on the bike with me, and me being like, no, just screaming. So I like to write things that I think we all have these fantasies, right? That it's just the fantasy of the sensation, even if in reality there's too many obstacles for us personally. And so it's always really fun to write things that I wouldn't do, but that I can still enjoy.
And I do want to say, because I thought about this is what I think about when I'm falling asleep, is the, in romance, you always have this black moment. And for those of you who are newer to romance, it's that moment where the couple is like, they're hit some bump in the road. It's like, will they or won't they? It's romance, it will. But you're not, there's something that's going to pull them apart or have a conflict. And in the Get a Life, Chloe Brown, like that conflict where they're like, this isn't going to work, lasts like 30 seconds. Like Red walks out the door and then he's like, okay, I'm done having my out-of-body experience. And so, I mean, I think that's such an interesting approach to, and then of course it takes some time for them to figure it out, but like that moment of no does not last long in this book.
Yeah, because I really don't like the Black moment. Like, I don't enjoy writing it because I'm like, just be besties. Like, we all know that's where you're going with this. So I like it. I also think it shows like the strength of the relationship. If, you know, we all have these ridiculous arguments and we all kind of, you know, we think everything's ruined, but then we think about it for a second and we're like, oh no, I was just being a baby. So I think it's great when they're at a stage where they have these internal issues that might cause like an explosive blow up, but very quickly they can pull it back and be like, but I love you, so what's the point?
And I think that's, you know, that's inspiring because romance and relationships take work. And
Yeah.
they do the work, but I agree. I sometimes am dreading the Black moment because I'm like, I'm loving these two. They're having a great time. Something terrible is going to happen. Someone's going to fall off the cliff, something. And it's not as great. And so it was very interesting to read this one and have them have that immediately like closed door. She's crying and he's like, what did I just do? And I mean, to me, that also is like when she very, you know, they're fighting because he's like, you put me on the list, and doesn't realize that what she's actually done is keeping him on the list.
Yeah.
Which is just like the sweetest thing ever. I have to say. So, I mean, I feel like for this couple, they are way more in tune with like what they actually want, and it isn't that all the way up until the end. Won't they? It's more of a like, how are they gonna, you know, navigate it?
Yeah, definitely.
Where else do you think they travel to? Since we just get to see a little peek of.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like they go to quite a few hot places because I think Chloe would enjoy just lying on a beach. But I think they go exploring a lot of different places, like places with historical interest, like what's the name of that country? Amsterdam. I hope that's not a country, is it? Is that country? I'm really bad at geography.
It's a city, but you know, I don't think people even think about what the country is. My mother lives in Amsterdam, so it's lovely, but I'm like, Amsterdam, which country is that? The Netherlands, yes.
They go like there, they go like Ghana, places with stuff to do, because I feel like they're very adventurous.
That's relationship goals right there. And then someone was pointing out that, you know, with Dani, it's the opposite. Zaf is like a romance reader. He's here for the romance and the emotion and the relationship. And she's like, absolutely not.
She's like, please relax, keep that over there.
And there's such a like flip. And I do have to say, reading that book for the second time, the prologue, you know, she's like asking for this sign. I need a sign. And I didn't even catch, because you learn later that like this protein bar like falls out of her clothes. And he's the one who does that. So it's like very from the beginning. And I just, you know, I wonder, like, when you're writing these, did you go back and add the prologue, or had you, you know, how do your plot sort of level out? It sounds like you planned pretty well.
I really like prologues. It's actually something I've had to cure myself of, because sometimes there's no need for a prologue and I'm like, and then we have the prologue. But this one I felt was justified because I wanted it to be like from the beginning, she's looking for something and it's there. And so I knew that Zaf was going to be like a very caretaking hero. And I was like, he's going to give her food, just because that's what he does. That's the kind of guy he is. And so I knew that something would like fall out of her pocket and it would be her first sign, and she would have no idea and ignore it completely. And it all kind of went from there. Yeah, like, accept that sign. I can't see that.
I would love to talk to you forever about all of the things, but we need to move on and want to invite you to read a little bit for us, and then we're going to go to the Q&A. So I'll let you take it away, and please drop your questions in the Q&A, because now it's I'm going to stop talking so much. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to read from the beginning of Get a Life, Chloe Brown. It looks like this, because this is my book to read from when I have to read things. So I'm really good at it. I've practiced a lot. Now I've said that, I'm probably going to mess it up. I'm so sorry. Once upon a time, Chloe Brown died. Nearly. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, of course. Disturbing things always seem to happen on Tuesdays. Chloe suspected that day of the week was cursed, but thus far, she'd only shared her suspicions via certain internet forums, and with Dani, the weirdest of her two very weird little sisters. Dani had told Chloe that she was cracked, and that she should try positive affirmations to rid herself of her negative weekday energy. So when Chloe heard shouts and the screech of tires and looked to her right, and found a shiny white Range Rover heading straight for her, Her first ridiculous thought was, I'll die on a Tuesday, and Dani will have to admit that I was right all along. But in the end, Chloe didn't actually die. She wasn't even horribly injured, which was a relief because she spent enough time in hospitals as it was. Instead, the Range Rover flew past her and slammed into the side of a coffee shop. The drunk driver's head-on collision with a brick wall missed being a head-on collision with a flesh and blood Chloe by approximately 3 feet. Metal crunched like paper. The middle-aged lady in the driver's seat slumped against an airbag, her crisp blonde bob swinging. Bystanders swarmed and there were shouts to call an ambulance. Chloe stared and stared and stared. People buzzed by her and time ticked on, but she barely noticed. Her mind flooded with irrelevant data. She wondered how much the repairs to the coffee shop would cost. She wondered if insurance would cover it, or if the driver would have to. She wondered who would cut the lady's hair because it was a beautiful job. It remained relatively sleek and stylish, even when she was hauled out of her car and onto a gurney. Eventually, a man touched Chloe's shoulder and asked, "Are you okay, my darling?" She turned and saw a paramedic with a kind, lined face and a black turban. "I believe I'm in shock," she said. "Could I have some chocolate? Green and black. Sea salt is my favorite, but the 85% dark probably has greater medicinal properties." The paramedic chuckled, put a blanket around her shoulders and said, "Would a cuppa do, your Madge?" "Oh, yes, please." Chloe followed him to the back of his ambulance, and somewhere along the way she realized she was shaking so hard that it was a struggle to walk. With a skill born of years of living in her highly temperamental body, she gritted her teeth and forced one foot in front of the other. When they finally reached the ambulance, she sat down carefully because it wouldn't do to collapse. If she did, the paramedic would start asking questions. Then he might want to check her over. Then she'd have to tell him about all her little irregularities and why they were nothing to worry about, and they'd both be here all day. Adopting her firmest, "I am very healthy and in control" tone, she asked briskly, "Will the lady be all right?" "The driver? She'll be fine, love. Don't worry about that." Muscles she hadn't realized were tense suddenly relaxed. In the end, after 2 cups of tea and some questions from the police, Chloe was permitted to finish her Tuesday afternoon walk. No further near-death experiences occurred, which was excellent, because if they had, she'd probably have done something embarrassing, like cry. Thank you. Thank you. I'm curtsying.
I appreciate that Chloe is like, ambulance person, can I get some chocolate?
Yeah, like it's an emergency.
Always have emergency chocolate on hand. All right, so we're going to go to the Q&A. We got a few questions already for you, but please, everybody, please add your questions about all things amazingly Talia Hibbert. And our first question from Pat is Chloe objectively beautiful, or do we just see the beauty that Red sees?
I think that's a really tricky question because I would say that the majority of Black people are not objectively beautiful by Western beauty standards, but the majority of Black people are also beautiful in a meaningful way. So I think Chloe's beautiful. I believe she is beautiful.
I'll agree with that. I think so. And this is a bit of a spicy question. Why do you only always have 2 spicy scenes? Like, girl, you're so good. I'm sure we can get more than 2 in there.
I feel like, wow, I feel so dragged right now. First of all, I didn't even know that I only had
Somebody's counting, they did the math, then they averaged it out.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to think. I think I have a book with more than 2. Okay, so I have a book called The Roommate Risk. And in my head, it's like my spiciest book. And they do it 1, I'm trying to count. So they do it then 1, do it then 2, they do it 3. Okay, it definitely has at least 3, The Roommate Risk. So
this is probably an SMCL first, but we do have the author counting out the sex scenes in her book. There are some things that must be known and are very, very important, in my mind especially. I need to know going in, am I getting some spicy scenes or not? And I'll be very sad if I don't. So, okay, here's another question. I really appreciate that basically all of your characters are very thoughtfully crafted with realistic qualities that include neurodivergence or grief or mental health issues, etc. And I think we touched on this one a little bit, but why do you, what do you do to try to include realistic details? Is it all personal experience or do you do research?
I really hate research. So where possible, I try to make it a personal experience. But if I am kind of inspired by something that isn't personal to me, usually it's because it's affected someone I know. And so my favorite form of research is just conversations with people who I know and who I kind of have a good relationship with, so we can have those trusting conversations about the experience. But, you know, other than that, research is definitely key, as much as I dislike doing it.
And something I'd meant to ask you is like, are there other genres that you'd really like to write in that you don't? But, I think about things like historical, and depending on your personal knowledge, that could be a lot of research.
Oh yeah, that's like the main reason that I haven't written historicals. Too much research, no thank you.
Totally fair, totally fair. Are the books in the Brown sisters standalone, or should you read in order? Thanks, I'm new to your books. That's from Marissa.
I feel like you can read them out of order, but you get maximum enjoyment in order, because you get to see, the stories make sense on their own, but you get to see people from previous books and see what they're doing in future books. So I think that's the best way.
Yeah, and you definitely get to know them very well over the course of the whole 3 books, which is awesome. So were you ever given pushback about the characters you were writing from publishers? They are so relatable and lovable, but did establishment ever not see them that way?
I'm really lucky to have written this series with Avon and have never had any kind of bad experience with them. And my editor, Nicole, is amazing, and I'm so grateful I got to collaborate with her. And also kind of the marketing and publicity team have always been really supportive and respectful as well. So it's just top to bottom been a great experience. I know that, I started out self-publishing my books, which I still kind of do, but I never imagined traditionally publishing, because I knew that people had had terrible experiences and that they could be just really damaging to a book's vision, especially if you're a marginalized author writing marginalized characters. So I was afraid of that, but I am lucky that that didn't happen at all.
I think we're all lucky for that as well, because we get to read your fabulous books. Here's a great question from Miha. Which romance authors are your favorite, and what would you like to see explored in the romance genre that hasn't been explored yet?
Oh, my favorite authors. There's so many. Okay, I love Nalini Singh. I love Vanessa Riley, Kennedy Ryan, Danielle Allen, Dylan Allen. I always say them together because their names are so similar. Chloe Lees is amazing. KJ Charles. RM Virtue. I have a lot, but I can never remember them. Exactly. And to be honest, I've been reading romance for so long, and I feel like if there's something I want to see explored in a romance, I am always confident that I can find it. I just feel like we're a genre of ingenious, inventive, demanding people. And like anything I want to see, I'm confident that I can write on Twitter or in a reader group somewhere, like, I want this, this, and this. Any recommendations? And I will get like 3 to 5 at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really, I like to say there's something for everybody in romance. When people are like, I don't read romance, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because there's
it's so huge.
Aliens, we got that. You want minotaurs, we got that. Like, do you want historical? Like, there's a little bit of everything out there. So
exactly.
And someone wrote in a PS to one of their earlier questions, what is a Rococo face? I think, is that in relation to Chloe? Is she described that way?
Oh, yes, I think she is. And basically, it's like an era of like furniture, like style. And it's basically like over the top gilt and like rich colors, and like it's just like very much and very beautiful.
And that made me think, because I can't believe I almost didn't ask this. And then, I mean, Chloe's style in general, and that's what leads to her being called Button, which is possibly the best thing I've ever read. So, there's like, she's got this very like retro glam kind of style going on that I, wish that I could pull off. That would be fun. Maybe is she like you? Are you like her in that in any way? Are you a big fan of retro buttons or all that stuff?
No, I'm wearing a t-shirt and leggings right now, and that's my preferred outfit.
That's comfort goals though, so there are priorities.
Exactly.
Okay, so Adina has a question. Since many folks do what they know, write what they know, will we get a book with a wedding?
You mean because I'm going to get married?
I think that, yes, it is a subtle question around the fact that you will get married and if it means we'll start seeing more weddings in your books.
I'm not planning my wedding, and I'm hoping it won't happen until like 10 years from now, and that I won't have to think about it or be involved in it at all. I'm just going to show up and be like, yes, I do. I absolutely do. And then leave. So probably not.
Okay, no wedding scenes probably coming up anytime soon.
I mean, I have a book that begins at a wedding. It's called Sweet on the Greek. And me writing that, I was like, how do weddings go? And then, oh, well, moving on. And then they go to the beach. So I
mean, I think that's probably how a lot of people wish their wedding planning had gone. How's it go?
Exactly.
I'll show up. All right, let's go to the beach. I would do that. Okay, so next question. Do you think that the pandemic is affecting how you write?
Oh yeah, definitely. First of all, it's slowed me down so much. Like everything just feels like I'm walking through porridge. It's terrible, 0 out of 10, hate it. Also, I think, you know what, silver linings, it's made me a much more intentional writer, and I've researched craft so much more because I've really had to, because otherwise I wouldn't write anything. So I've developed systems and I've learned so much, and I've also learned to really stretch myself. For example, I mentioned writing Eve's book. I was like, I want this to be chaotic. I want this to be the max of what it can be. I'm naturally a very quiet writer, but I am being more and more out there because life is so terrible and stifled. So in short, yes, it has.
And I like, as a reader, has it affected your reading? That's my personal question.
Yes, it has. Like, I've been a reader my whole life. The one thing I've always been able to do is pick up a book. And now, you know, I don't read that much. Sometimes I get the urge to read. A lot of the time it's the urge to read a very, very short book, or I get the urge to read something, I'm enjoying it, but for some reason I just can't finish it. And that's happening to me with a lot of things, you know, with games I like to play with, like, you know, I feel like I'm approaching everything in tiny phases and I'm over it so quickly, and I don't like that, but I can't seem to change it.
I mean, I think the pandemic has had that effect in a lot of ways on everybody's life. And if you are new to this lovely series and this amazing author, I highly suggest to, like, if you grab the first book from the library, keep going. And I think it may bring you a lot of joy during what can be a tricky time. Any favorite holiday romance books?
Ooh, Katie Wilde. Katie Wilde has 2 holiday romance books. No, she has 3, but the third is not technically holiday, it's just set in winter. So in my head, it's holiday. But that's like a fantasy romance, and I would really recommend it. It's like, barbarians, stabby main characters, love it. Basically, she's just a great author for like very bonkers, fun, steamy books that are very inventive, and I love it. And she does amazing work with a good theme. And Rebecca Weatherspoon also has a Christmas book that's kind of like, it's connected to her Fit trilogy. I think you can read it on its own though. You'll know it's a Christmas book because it has like a hot Santa dude on the front. So look out for that.
I'm here for that. I'm gonna go, hold on, let me download that. Hot Santa sounds good. Do you like holiday movies?
No, I don't. I'm not very like a Christmassy person. I'm like, someone give me some chocolate, and other than that, I'm gonna do the same thing I always do.
Very fair. Okay, a question from Anna. What has inspired you to purposefully include descriptions of things like scars, stretch marks, or pubic hair? I completely love how humanizing these choices are after growing up reading about flawless, high-breasted, tiny-waisted heroines, but I'd love to know if it's a feminist stance intentionally or something else.
I feel like, you know, I also grew up reading about those tiny waisted heroines and their pearlescent skin, and I was kind of like, that's not what I look like. So now I think, you know, romance, the thing of it is that romance has always had this long tradition of celebrating everything about the main characters' bodies in really luxurious detail, but those bodies have always been the standard. And I think when you have more marginalized bodies, they should still get the same treatment. So that is why, you know, I describe the things that, the details of my characters' bodies in that way, because also I think that's how attraction works, right? You're attracted to someone and you're just attracted to them as a whole, and you're like, oh, look at their amazing back knee. I mean, maybe not, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you love them as a person, and that includes all of the bits of
Exactly,
them.
and you're into them, yeah.
Yeah, and you're into the back knee too. Oh, this is a good question. Tony wants to know, can we get an update on your socials when you watch Bridgerton? If and when you watch Bridgerton? Will you live tweet for your Bridgerton watch?
If I do, I will definitely live tweet it, because I like live tweeting. Like, it's very frantic, it's very exciting. So
there are certain episodes too where we like, ooh, she's gonna start episode 6.
Yeah, and everyone's like, tell me what you
And then another question from Tony: why do you choose to write in dual point of view? Is it because you like them, or because they are just objectively better?
Love how loaded that question is.
There's no wrong answer here.
I think that I enjoy writing dual point of view because one thing I love so much about romance is that it's, you know, you can have 2 or even more main characters rather than the typical just one main character. I mean, I know that, for example, a lot of fantasy, like high fantasy books, can have multiple points of view, and I like that. So, you know, romance is a great opportunity to do that. And I also feel like because a romance is about like multiple people drawing closer to being a unit, it's great to see both perspectives in how they do that. Of course, I've read books that are just single point of view that I think are amazing, and the romance is elevated by the mystery around the other person's point of view. But when I'm writing, I like to be able to see everyone.
Yeah, I know people have very strong feelings about the kind of point of view they will read or they won't read. And but you're right, there's definitely an element of like, you get mystery or it does this to the story. So I agree with all of those things. Is it harder to write male from Talia than male-female? That's Medina.
I don't experience any differences. I haven't published, but I've written FF books as well. And again, I would say that actually there is one thing that's difficult, is if you're writing in the third person and your main characters have the same pronouns, it's so difficult. So my preference when I can is to do it in the first person. So it's like I versus him or I versus her, rather than her, and we're drowning in hers. But sometimes you can't do that though, so you just have to, that is harder.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting lost in the who is speaking. Okay, so the next person wants to start by saying, I want to thank you so much for writing this book, which inspires me in a relationship that is also fraught with fear and misunderstandings, to overcome them and find the happiness that Red and Chloe did. For me, this was more than a rom-com. It's a personal development book.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, thank you so much. That's like the highest praise possible, I think. Wow, thank you.
The writing is doing a lot for a lot of people in many different ways. That's an awesome comment. And then Pat writes, I love that you write about marginalized people. Do you ever explain their ethnic backgrounds, their countries, their ancestors are from? What is that information for Chloe and her family, and Red and Vic?
So I like to, I was on a panel with Olivia Dade, who writes amazing books and especially body positive representation, and she talked about incidental representation, where you have marginalized characters and their marginalization isn't like the point of the story, but it's just an element of their life, the way it is an element of any real person's lives. And so I feel like a lot of the time in my books, I don't explicitly state the ethnic backgrounds of characters, but I feel a lot of the time people who share those backgrounds might notice that the characters are the same as them. So Chloe, the Brown sisters are British Jamaican, and Chloe's dad and Gigi have been in Britain, like that side of the family has been in Britain longer, whereas Chloe's mum is, I think, like a first or second generation British Jamaican. And I can't remember for anyone else, sorry.
Well, we know Red has the lovely ginger hair.
He does. Let's say he's Irish.
My boyfriend is Irish, so he'll be thrilled. I'm like, oh, good. I love what I've never said. And just a reminder, if you've got questions, please drop them in the Q&A. I know somebody asked earlier in the chat, since you were talking about sort of writing your grandmothers into this book, the question came up of, do your grandmothers read your books?
Ooh, no, only one of my grandmothers is with us and able to read the books, and she does not read them because I told her not to, first of all. But also, I don't think they're really her cup of tea. She likes memoirs. She's a very serious lady. She's very practical.
Does anyone in your family read romance? Do you have any other romance fans?
My aunt and my cousin, her daughter, they both read my books. And I just like to pretend that they don't. And we never ever discuss it.
That makes a lot of sense too. Can I ask, like, are you reading anything right now?
Oh, what am I reading right now? Yes, I am. Let me just check the title. I actually recently finished reading an early copy of a book called The Stand-In, which I believe is by Lily Chu. And it's kind of like The Prince and the Pauper, but like not. So it's set in Canada, and the heroine looks just like this super famous Chinese actress. And the actress is going through some stuff and she needs like a stand-in for events. So the heroine, for reasons of her own, agrees, but the actress has this kind of will they, won't they media relationship with a very famous, very handsome actor. And so now the heroine has to perform that relationship with him. And also he doesn't like her because he thinks the stand-in idea is bad, and he's not wrong. So there's a lot going on. It's really fun. It's really emotional. It made me feel a lot of things. I don't know when it comes out, but I would recommend it. And I'm also
our pile right now. Go for it.
You should.
Go put it on hold in the library. Go for it. Whatever you need to do.
And I'm actually rereading a book that I read a long time ago before it came out, but then it came out like last week, and I was like, perfect time to reread. And They Lived Happily Ever After by Therese Bihari, which is like, it feels so vintage because it's a contemporary story, but the heroine is magic. So, and I feel like that was a big thing when I was younger and then kind of faded out, and now it's coming back and I love it. And essentially she writes romance novels, but she dreams the romance novels and they're magically written, and she's really in the dreams. And then one day she sort of hooks up with her best friend's little brother, and from that point on he is in her dreams and he's really there, and he's like, what is this? And she's like, and I just love it.
I'm a fan of paranormal. I'm a fan of magical realism, so that one sounds really fun too. And a few more questions have come in, so we're going to try to get to these last questions before we wrap up today. So some anonymous writes, I want to say thanks. You write about things that are often not included, like having to go to the bathroom after sex, and including things like that are so important for people to know about, as it's often not talked about. What are these things like that you want to include that you think people should know? Or maybe they meant, what are other things you think people should know? Like, do you like to slip little PSAs into the realism of the world into your writing?
I feel like when I'm writing something and I'm kind of envisioning, I feel like I see the scenes in my head and they play out. And if it's like a daily life sort of scene or a fact of life scene, like if you have a vagina and you have penetrative sex, you need to go to the bathroom. And so I'm like, obviously at this point she goes to the bathroom, and so I put it in, and maybe in the first draft it doesn't occur to me that this is a thing, but then I think it's just so easy to, we're writing romance, so things are always going to be romanticized, and for the sake of plot and speed alone it's easy to skip these things. But if it is possible to include them, it's nice to include them, because like you said before, people love to have those relatable real life moments.
Yeah, totally. I think I can't remember which author was. Somebody wrote about like the wet spot in the bed. And you knew it was love because he would sleep in the wet spot.
Oh, wait, this has reminded me as well, but I can never remember. I'm so bad at remembering names. Oh, ooh, no, I can't remember. Please, I'm so sorry. Give me one second.
I couldn't remember the book I was just talking about. And I'm like, I like to remind myself that this is my actual job. I'm a librarian and I'm talking about the wet spots in the bed.
Okay. Adult Ian, she has a few books out. They're like new adult. And one thing I love is that she kind of includes all these really interesting PSAs about like sexual health. So in one of her books, there's like a scene where they have sex in a club bathroom, but they wash their hands first. There's just stuff like that all through the book, and I love it.
Also, that's very pandemic appropriate.
Right?
Someone asked if it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask. What is your favorite sex scene you've written? That is a spicy question.
I actually don't know, because one thing is, a lot of the time when I write something, I immediately forget it. I'm like racking my brain, and I honestly have no idea. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. As people who read them, I think we enjoyed them. So like, even if it leaves your brain to get on the page, like, great. It worked out real well for us. Okay, and this is our final question from Tony, who says, and this is actually a comment, but it's a super sweet comment. I love the bi representation in your books. Dani and Ruben! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I think you're a phenomenal author. My best friend and I love you so much. When we need courage, we say, even Dani would be so proud of you.
Oh my God, I love that. That's so cute. Thank you. I actually love that.
That is an amazing, amazing comment to end on, and I think I'm going to start saying that to myself as well. All right, well, it is 1:02, and we are coming at the end of our session here. So I just want to take a moment to thank you so much, Talia. This has made my month, my year. You have no idea. Huge fan, and I can tell all the romance love in the chat as well that we're all huge fans. So thank you everyone who joined us today. Please check out our upcoming author talks and events at smcl.org/events. We also appreciate if you could tell us how SMCL did with this program at smcl.org/rate this event. And I think Jenna's dropping all of that in the chat because she's magical. This author talk will be added to our SMCL YouTube channel and sent out to everyone who registered. So you can relive if there's a book title you needed to grab for your TBR, it'll be there. So have an awesome, awesome rest of your day, everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming to see us talk, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's been a delight. All right, everybody, have a good day. Bye.
Bye.